Hiding a teenage boy in plain sight: A daughter's fight to be heard. It began with my mother's words drifting through the house like an unexpected storm. Just a few weeks ago, she told my father she was going to leave him. The announcement was low and calm, but beneath her tone lay tremors I could almost feel. I was 17, my younger sister even younger, and at that moment the world we had known cracked open. Everything, our dinners, the way the living room smelled in the afternoons, the laughter bouncing through the hallway, seemed to pause, waiting for us to catch our breath. Mother left soon after. She said she would be away with friends, a short trip abroad to clear her head. She hugged us goodbye, her eyes distant but promises firm. She'd be back soon. When she returned, the house felt different. The quiet was thicker somehow, as if every piece of furniture held its breath. One evening, she sat us down and told us the truth. She had not spent those weeks in the company of friends, but in a completely different country. She had been meeting someone not much older than me. He was 19. He had been her teenage boyfriend, someone she had connected with online long before she told us of the divorce. The scene that followed felt unreal, as if someone had dropped us into someone else's life. I remember the strange emptiness in my chest when she said his age. 19. He was practically my peer. Phrases like mature boy and age is just a number washed over me, but they didn't land. Instead, I felt sick to my stomach. My sister stayed silent, tears in her eyes, clutching her pillow as though it might hold her upright. My mother spoke of how caring he was, how he already told her stories about us, how she hoped we would accept him one day. She carelessly mentioned plans for him to move to our country, for us to live with them after the divorce was finalized, and I thought my heart would fracture right there. He had been her secret months before she told us she was leaving. That twist felt cruel, like watching someone rewrite a play without telling the rest of the cast. I wanted to scream, to say it was gross, it was sick, it was insane. But I said nothing. My voice stuck somewhere behind my ribs, trapped by disbelief. My mother insisted we give him a chance, insisted he was different, that he already cared deeply about our family, even though I still couldn't process what she asked us to believe, that he was a teenage boy and she was our mother. The dissonance rang in my ears day and night. We tried the next few days as though nothing had changed. She talked to me and my sister about the divorce, logistics, where everyone would live, what the new daily life would look like. But her tone carried the weight of the secret she tried to convince us didn't matter. I would lie awake in my room, lights off, heart pounding in the dark, imagining a boy no older than a college freshman maybe, walking into our home as though it were normal. The thought shocked me into nausea. I kept imagining my life being shoved into some strange new chapter I never asked for. My mother asked if I would meet him, eventually, if I would listen, try, give him a chance for my sake and for my sister's sake. And there it was again, that sick sensation, the baffled ache in my chest. I brushed her off, muttering words like not yet and this is too weird, any excuse to protect the thin shell around me. Inside, I felt eroded, unsure whether to hate him or pity him, or hate my mother more. One afternoon I went with her to run errands, hoping the natural distance of movement and distraction might give me clarity. We drove through streets I knew so well yet seemed suddenly alien. I tried to focus on small tasks, picking paint samples for the room my sister and I would share soon, grabbing groceries, returning library books. Each time I looked out the window, I tried to steady my reflection, someone my own age, not a reflection of my mother's girlfriend. But each time I heard her voice in the car say, "He really wants to be part of your life," I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. That evening, my mother finally told us his name, Alex. He was 19. She told us how they met online months ago, through a community, something she said felt safe, uplifting. He lived far away, but he cared, he messaged every day, they video called. She spoke about his laugh, the way he took an interest in what we did, the respect he showed her. But I couldn't stop thinking of him as a child, a teenager, someone who belonged in a completely different story than ours. The feeling was visceral, like a hand around my throat. Standing in the bathroom mirror late at night, I looked at my own reflection and wondered how to feel about any of this. I thought of my sister, only 12, and the questions we both had. Was this really going to happen? Would we have to call him brother? Would I have to sit next to this boy at the dinner table, forced to pretend it was normal? The entire concept felt like a violation of everything I believed a family should be. At school the next morning, I saw my friends talk about prom dates, smartphones, homework, and the contrast hit me like a cold slap. I was 17, but the world I was about to step into suddenly felt uncertain. People my age were supposed to poke around for their own future partners, not end up living with grown-ups who treated a teenager like an equal in her adult relationship. After class, My best friend asked me what was wrong. I nearly broke down, my chest tight, words stuck. Finally, I told him a version of the truth. Mom's seeing a teenager. He looked at me like I'd said I'd seen a ghost, eyes wide. That's messed up, dude. The word, simple and blunt, gave me permission to feel what I felt. It didn't fix anything, but it was a start. Over the next days, I tried to talk to my sister in whispers. She admitted she felt jealous, scared, confused, worse than I did. She said she missed the old routine, the quiet stability. We hugged. In that moment, I realized our bond was something I could protect. Maybe if things felt weird at home, we could hold on to each other. My mother kept talking about signing him into a school here, finding a place for him, and me and my sister were just supposed to accept it. That expectation felt like being shoved into the deep end before I could swim. I wondered if I was being selfish, stubborn. She said, "I hope you can eventually see that age is just a number." But I couldn't see it. I saw it plain. Every year felt enough to make a chasm, two lives that should have never collided like this. The quiet tension in our home grew thick, but I realized I couldn't just sink beneath it. I had to speak up. That night, I approached her calmly, voice steady though my heart hammered. I told her I wasn't okay. That I couldn't process it, and that I needed time and space. I asked her not to rush any plans involving Alex living with us, not to force anything we weren't ready for. It wasn't a confrontation, but a plea for the normalcy I'd lost. She listened, face tight. I saw her eyes soften, maybe guilt, maybe sadness. She said she understood we needed space. She said she loved me, she loved my sister, and that she would slow down and talk more before any decisions were made. It didn't change everything, but it was the first step toward being heard. That night, I went to my room and sat on the bed. My sister was already asleep upstairs, her breathing soft. The house felt quieter, the tension slightly diffused. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply, enough to remind myself I was still me, not swallowed by the chaos. I thought about what I wanted, the safety of my home, a father and mother I could understand, time to work through this. And somewhere in that stillness, I decided I could survive this upheaval, carry it forward, ask questions, set boundaries, but also still love her, just different from before. I do not yet know how it will end. Maybe she and Alex grow closer, maybe they don't. My sister and I might end up with my father after all. But I know who I am, a 17-year-old who deserves voice and respect, a home that feels real, and the freedom to say, no, not yet. And perhaps that is enough to carry me through this strange and difficult change. The morning after her confession dawned cold and gray, the sky low with unshed rain as if the world itself shied away from our new reality. I woke before the alarm, lingering in bed as silence weighed heavy through the house. The hush echoed within me, an emptiness I couldn't name yet. When I finally rose, the air felt too still, too watchful. In the kitchen, I started the kettle, its soft hum breaking the quiet. Steam curled into the air, carrying the faint scent of lemon from the mug beside it. I wrapped both hands around it, the warmth comforting, but it couldn't thaw the chill of questions swirling in my mind. My sister and I shared a breakfast that tasted different, of uncertainty, of roles that no longer fit. My mother sat at the table opposite me, stirring her tea slowly, gaze drifting through the curtains. Her voice came low. "There's something I want you both to know," she began, and I braced myself. She told us of Alex, his age, 19, the place she'd really been, the months of online conversations, the affection she felt. As she spoke, the air in the room seemed to tremble. My sister's eyes darkened, I felt nausea pool in my stomach. The words were soft, but each one felt like a stone thrown into my carefully ordered world. By the time she paused, the table felt vast and empty. Outside, rain began in quilts of steady gray. I watched through the kitchen window as droplets slid down the pane, drawing ghostly trails. The distant hum of passing cars was muffled by the weather, and the kitchen felt suspended, caught between what was and what would become. I gripped the edge of the table until my knuckles flexed white, wondering if I'd lose my grip on everything I knew. When she spoke of welcoming Alex into our lives, moving into our home with him, planning our new family dynamic, I wanted to argue, to object, to turn it all back before it broke. But my voice broke in my throat. I focused instead on breathing so as not to cry or shout. Beside me, my sister shrank behind her toast, fingers curled into the crust. She looked small, fragile, and my stomach clenched tighter. After breakfast, I retreated to my room, closing the door on their murmured reassurance. My sanctuary felt tainted now, the air dense with questions. I lay face down on the bed, arms wrapped around my pillow, thinking of the boy my mother described, so close in age I could have been his sister, someone I might have gone to school dance with. The familiarity made it worse, more visceral, more suffocating. I felt betrayed by the generational lines we crossed, by the secret she kept, by the hope she now tried to plant in us like seeds of acceptance. The afternoon passed in a daze. I tried to drown out her footsteps moving through the hallway, her laughter in the living room with my sister as they planned their new life. The humming of the refrigerator before dinner grated against my nerves. I lifted my phone, thumb hovering over social media, scrolling enough to see birthdays, homework, school achievements, and the normalcy of it all contrasted painfully with the storm in my head. Other 17-year-olds were posting vacation photos, exam results, summer excitement. I was here, inside this shifting landscape, clutching at my identity. Later, at the dinner table, conversation stumbled. My mother asked how my sister's homework was going. She asked me about college applications. Never once did she mention Alex, as though hoping to grease the transition with silence. But the space around her seat felt loaded, stretched thin by unsaid things. My sister answered in few words, I replied even less, twisting my fork through mashed potatoes as though doing so carved each question into the table. That night, when my mother came to tuck us in, the tension broke. She brushed my hair back and said softly, I love you, and I realized how much I needed to say, but didn't know how to begin. I lay in bed, the ceiling pressing close, listening to the house breathe. Somewhere downstairs, water dripped in the sink. Somewhere outside, wind rattled the panes. Sleep came fitful, drawn-out dreams of Alex at my school, of our home split with his presence, of my mother's laughter with him in the hall. In the morning, I woke to silence again, this time, more fragile than before. Over cereal, I mustered words. I'm not ready, I said, voice low. My mother looked up, eyes wide, her expression a mix of relief and sorrow. My sister nodded quietly. It was only those words, but they felt like holding up a lifeline in the storm. She didn't push. She didn't protest. She just nodded and said, I understand. After school, I found my sister in the garden, seated on the damp grass by the lavender bushes. Her eyes were red, but she managed a small, brave smile when I sat beside her. Silence stretched for a moment, comfortable, something we had lost at home. Then she rested her head on my shoulder. We stayed that way, watching the wind stir the petals, until I felt our bond settling again, siblings in a changing world, with each other to hold on to. Returning inside, I caught my mother in the hallway. We paused, and she offered nothing. No request. No apology. Just quiet acknowledgement. I nodded and turned away, calm for the first time since everything shifted, knowing it wasn't resolution, but a path forward. One I would walk on my terms. That evening, I lay in bed wondering who Alex really was and what my mother saw in him. But more important, I thought of who I was, and who I still had the right to be, a 17-year-old making sense of her teenage world, not ready to rewrite it to fit someone else's plan. And that, I realized, was enough for now. The house seemed to hold its breath in the mornings now, as if uncertain how to start the day again. I woke before my parents in the dim half-light of dawn, the curtains still closed, the air heavy with silent expectations. I could hear distant breathing through the thin walls, my sister's faint snores, the house settling in its usual creaks. I rolled onto my side and stared at the ceiling, tracing shadows that shifted as the light changed. The world outside felt paused, too, as if the sky hesitated behind the glass. I closed my eyes, trying to feel steady again, the way I used to before everything unraveled. Downstairs, I found her in the kitchen before the alarm went off. The kettle hissed like a cautious promise. Steam curled like tendrils in the air, filling the room with the soft scent of lemon from the mug she'd left on the counter. I stood there, taking it all in, the gentle clink as she set down a spoon, the low hum of the fridge, the way her shoulders slumped, still carrying memories of the conversation she'd had with us. I didn't speak. The moment itself felt loud enough. Later, when the sun climbed high enough to brighten the living room, I crept down again and found my mother with her phone pressed to her ear as she finished something in hushed tones. The screen glowed with his name across it, Alex. She caught my eye and froze for a second, the phone lowering, the warmth in her cheeks retreating. It felt like catching someone in an embrace, or a lie. She put her phone down and turned away as I moved past without a pause. That day unfolded in quiet fragments. I answered questions during breakfast, how's your sister's project? But each question felt like a wedge. The house smelled of toast, sweet and bitter in equal parts, and I could taste tension in the air, thick like syrup on my tongue. After school, I avoided her momentary glance until I could slip into my room and close the door behind me, sealing in the quiet. The silence there felt familiar, comforting, as if I could fold myself flat against my mattress and disappear the edges of today. She tapped on my door late that afternoon with soft persistence. Her voice was careful. "Can we talk?" she asked. The kettle whistled again from the kitchen, broken and shaky. I said nothing for longer than I meant to. My heart pounded. Talk about what? I felt furious, but drained. The room felt smaller as she stepped inside. I could smell her perfume, light and sweet, but tainted now by the sharp haze of betrayal. She sat on the edge of the bed, fingers curled around the hem of her sweater. "I know this is hard," she began. I could see beads of sweat on her upper lip, tiny islands of worry. She didn't look like the same person who invited a stranger into our home. I breathed deeply, recalling a writing guide I'd seen about emotional writing using sensory details, how the smell of kitchen bread evokes nostalgia, how a creaking door can heighten tension. Fastercapital.com. In that moment, every sound, the fan's low whir, the quiet tick of the clock, felt magnified, each heartbeat a shock wave under my ribs. I opened my mouth to tell her that his name made my skin crawl, that his age made my blood run cold, but instead I released a single sigh and closed my eyes. She waited. The kettle's hiss, her breathing, my silence, they wove around us and stretched the space longer than it ought to have been. Finally I spoke, voice small, "I need time." She nodded, relief softening her face. "As much as you need," she whispered. For the rest of the day, I stayed in my room. I could hear her walking through the hallway, sighing with the weight of bearing nothing, trying to take up less space. At dinner, she asked me what I wanted for tomorrow, what we could help with, who wanted to walk the dog. She spoke gently, as though each word was being tossed through fog. I answered as best I could, careful to sound present. That night, I lay awake, the ceiling low and close. I tried to imagine him, Alex, mostly teenage hair, jeans, maybe a shy voice trying to find its place in a house that wasn't his. I heard the faint snap of woodwind outside, leaves brushing against the window, and I thought of my sister upstairs. I pictured her waking up, and them living here, eating breakfast with us. The idea made my gut twist. Before I slept, I reached for my journal. I wrote at length, as if explaining myself back to me, to name the questions, the confusion, the fear. I wrote that I didn't hate him yet, didn't hate her, just couldn't draw those lines yet. I wiped a tear from the page and closed the book at the end, the texture of its cover heavy in my hand. The next morning was clearer. Not bright, but less weighed. I went to school. My friends joked about trivial things, homework, prom dresses, summer songs. I nodded along, sharing a few laughs, but my mind flicked back to timing, to boundaries, to what felt safe. After school, she was waiting with the car. Her eyes flicked to mine in the rearview mirror. I looked ahead, gripped the edge of the seat. "Dinner, if you want," she offered. Not a question. I said yes. At home, we sat around the table. The kettle hissed briefly on the stove behind us. My sister chattered about her day, but the tension softened around her. My mother listened, asked questions, no mention of him. I felt some tension ease, just enough to let us breathe again. After the plates were cleared, she gave me a small, tentative smile. "I'm giving Alex more time," she said. Her voice shook nearly imperceptibly. "No rush. Pause. Until you and your sister are okay." My breath caught. That moment, hesitation, soft weight, felt more honest than anything she'd said up to now. She wasn't pushing. She was waiting. She wasn't sure where we stood, but she was staying still for us. That night, I lay in bed. The fan hummed, every sound felt tuned to my breath. I listened to the quiet, the darkness, the way the whole world could shrink down to one voice. I thought about boundaries, respect, age, life, how everything shifts the older you get. And I felt something tighten inside me, growing steady, the belief that I could find my own voice in this story, that this might not be the end of the family as I knew it, but a new chapter, unfamiliar, yes, full of questions, but maybe, if we stayed honest, not broken. The morning light through my window felt gentler that day, less heavy, carrying a sense of possibility rather than weight. I awoke before the sun fully rose, the air cool and still in the house. My sister slept soundly in the next room, and somewhere downstairs, my mother moved quietly, footsteps softened, respectful of the fragile calm I was learning to hold. I lay on my back, eyes tracing patterns on the ceiling, breathing in rhythm with the slow ticking of the old clock. For the first time in weeks, I felt grounded. Downstairs, the smell of brewing coffee and cinnamon toast greeted me. In the kitchen, my mother hummed softly as she toasted bread and sprinkled cinnamon over warm butter, her voice a quiet balm against the tension. She looked up when I entered, offering a smile that seemed genuine, not rehearsed. I nodded, and she poured me a mug of cocoa. The drink was rich, warm, and familiar, comfort and routine wearing a steadier coat. Later, we found ourselves in the living room, sitting side by side on the couch. She reached over and took my hand, and in that grip, I felt reassurance. She spoke without urgency. "I will not bring him here until you both are truly okay." Her voice was calm and firm. "There is no rush. We'll take this slow. I owe you that." The sincerity in her words was like a bridge, drawing me closer to a path I thought had vanished. That afternoon, I spent time with my sister building a pillow fort in the living room while my mother watched nearby, reading quietly. The air smelled of cotton and lavender from the sachets we tucked into the blankets. My sister giggled when I pretended the fort was our secret kingdom, our safe place. I realized that we, not some stranger, defined our family's heart. Later, we ate sandwiches and fruit, voices light, the air inside full without being forced. The evening came with golden light spill across the floor. My mother suggested we go for a walk. We left the pillows and blankets in place and stepped outside into cooling air scented of grass and dusk. We walked slowly, feet crunching on the gravel path. My sister pointed out fireflies, holding out her palm to catch their glow. I looked at her, then at the trough of evening sky, and felt a soft peace settle in me. My mother walked slightly behind, hand tucked into mine, silent but present. We returned just as darkness fully embraced the neighborhood, the porch light flicking on with a warm glow. My sister asked for water and the three of us moved through the evening routine, washing up, brushing teeth, like dancers finding harmony again. Before bed, my mother came into my room. She tucked me in and paused, fingers brushing my shoulder. "Thank you for giving me a chance," she said. Her voice shook almost imperceptibly. "I love you." I turned to face her and managed a nod. It was enough. In the quiet before sleep, I thought of what had changed. The dread, the confusion, the sick knots in my chest, those had eased. My mother had listened. She had stopped forcing change on us. I realized the core of our heartbreak wasn't the idea of someone new, it was losing our voice in our own home. Today, she had given that back. That night, I closed my eyes and pictured our living room, pillow fort and empty cocoa mugs, the glow of fireflies, the comfort of shared silence. I pictured Mom behind me, walking with me, not pushing me forward, but waiting at my pace. I realized that this chapter of our lives would continue, filled with slow steps and cautious hope. Alex might come someday, but at this moment, I had what I needed most, a mother who heard me, a sister who understood, and a home that still felt like ours. And as I drifted into sleep, I believed again that the questions ahead, how to heal, how to rebuild, whether Alex belongs someday, were ours to explore on our terms, together. We were still a family, fragile but intact, moving forward one honest day at a time.